Well, hello and welcome or welcome back to Read Becca. It's time once again for my weekly chatty catch up on everything I've read, everything I'm currently reading, and everything I'm looking forward to reading, as well as some general chit chat and catch up on my life in the past week. So I have been mostly just reading away at things, lots and lots of things. The currently reading pile has gotten a little out of control, but I finished a few things as well. Good things for spooky season. So the first was for Victober, and that is from A Whisper in the Dark, 12 Thrilling Tales by Louisa May Alcott. And this is a collection of stories. I read the first one, which is actually a novel and the longest one of her stories published under a pseudonym rather than her own name. So she published them like serially and in newspapers. Some of them are short stories. This one is a novel. And they are all sort of salacious types of tales you would have found published serially at the time. So that's why she didn't publish them under her name. But I found this so interesting because I could see some vibes of her writing in the early parts, but certainly as it started ramping up and getting very unhinged and salacious, I didn't really see Alcott there. But it was great because so much of this story in modern Mephistopheles is connected with Goethe's Faust. And we have that prominent deal with the devil type of story, though not quite as literal as I expected. And interestingly, I've read quite a bit of work that was around the same time, and that deal with the devil comes up an awful lot. Like Poe frequently has that in his stories. And so that was interesting on its own, but it isn't quite as literal because we effectively have Jasper Hellwise is the devil character of this. It never becomes clear if he actually is supernatural or not, to me at least. I didn't see anything overt here that indicates he is, but he makes a deal with Felix, our sort of main character. Felix is a writer or aspiring writer. It's clear he's struggling and kind of feels very down about his own writing. He makes a deal. And again, I'm not sure if this is very literal or figurative, but the deal is more or less for him to be in control of his life. It's like, give me this amount of time of your life. But it doesn't seem like it's give me a year of your life and you're giving up a year of your life. It's more like, I will direct your actions for a year of your life kind of deal. And that will make you successful. So he does that. He agrees because he feels like he's not having the success he wants and he can maybe get the success he wants in his writing. So one of the first most prominent things that happens is he is told to marry this woman, Gladys. And there's a big age gap there. And actually their dynamic reminds me immensely of Dorothea Brooke and Mr. Casaubon in Middlemarch, which I am still reading, just very slowly. I think we're going to be back at it next month. But Middlemarch, regardless, Dorothea is probably the main character, if there is one, to Middlemarch. And there's a big age gap between her and Mr. Casaubon, and he is writing this immense work that he's been working on and grappling with for ages. And there's some dynamic there about her being increasingly and incredibly supportive about his work and wanting to kind of be involved. Here, Gladys doesn't really want to be involved necessarily, but she is unequivocally supportive of her husband's work, and Felix feels very doubtful about his own work constantly, and he's constantly wanting to start over and thinking that his work is not worth anything. And that sort of is the main part of the story for the longest time, and it's a really, really mundane story. So I could see Alcott in the writing there at first because it's very slow, descriptive, very just people living their lives for the most part. And then it takes a significant turn. We get a real turn as he's increasingly doubting, as she is trying to lift him up, and Jasper is just ever present there and sort of ominous. So very strong ominous vibes without anything really gruesome happening. And then in the turn, we get almost this love triangle, but it's not really clear if anything happens at all significant of the love triangle, but certainly we have this dynamic where Jasper has feelings for Gladys, and Felix seems to know about it, even though nobody is really talking about it. So there's that tension ramping up from relationships, but also the work element. Felix is feeling increasing doubt about his work to the point that he starts talking about how it's not really his work. And I, again, never got a sense of literal versus figurative on that, whether he was just in doubt of his own abilities and thinking it was because of this deal with Jasper, the work is coming out well, or if literally Jasper wrote some of his work and he is stealing and being a massive fake. I don't know. So I did like it, but I don't know entirely what to make of the story because things turned and got so unhinged very, very quickly. And it is kind of a tragic story because of that. The ways that it ramps up and then winds down at the end are really dramatic, and I think very fitting for exactly the thrilling tales that I was expecting from this. It just happened very suddenly. So I enjoyed that. I may or may not continue on with this right now. I think the next story is very short. It's only a couple pages. So I may read that, but probably not for the rest of October. So that is my victober selection done there. And then I also read The Woods All Black by Lee Mandelo, a little novella. And Lee Mandelo is queer and I think trans and also Appalachian. So this is written from a very own voices perspective. This is a historical Appalachian Gothic story where we are following Leslie, who is in 1920s Appalachia and is a nurse that went to World War I overseas, has come back and has been assigned to this small country village in Appalachia. Very rural, very religious. And so this does verge into religious horror, I would say, and those real world oppressive elements, certainly. So Leslie is arriving there and is immediately very unwanted and unwelcomed because there's a pastor there who thinks that women should not work, and really just very oppressive version of Christian religion. He thinks that more or less, women should remain silent all the time. And not, like, there are just weird takes there all around. Like, he's immensely unhappy about Leslie being there to nurse because Leslie will not have ever had a child as someone who's single. And he thinks that surely mothers and grandmothers of pregnant women would be better placed. Like, that's something overt that he talks about. But just in general, there's this broad rejection. However, Leslie is also a trans man. Living outwardly, obviously, in the 1920s, closeted. So what I love the most about this is the dissonance that you have to immediately experience reading this, because the way this is written, you just are sort of pushed into it immediately with Leslie internally, and the book itself writing Leslie with he, him pronouns and as a man internally. But every outward thing, everything about physicality, crossing arms under breasts, or the way people are addressing him in dialogue is always in the feminine. And so that is really interesting. And it does really put you into this immediately dissonant space as you're reading. Though, you can feel the consistency in who Leslie is, who he is. He's such a strong character that comes through. It just feels uncomfortable. And I've not had quite that experience with a book like this, where it doesn't sit there and explain to us what he's going through necessarily, because he's already been living this for years of his life. And so there is no reason for him to be reactive and express to the reader what he's feeling in those minor moments of being misgendered and whatnot, as that's happening literally all of the time. So I loved that sense of character and that discomfort that is introduced as a non-horror aspect. But then to the flip side, the fact that this is an Appalachian Gothic, it does have a horror element. Obviously, with this religious oppression being a cover over the entire village, the religion aspect doesn't really ramp up. And it almost felt like a happy story of horror to me, because everything sort of does turn in a way that is horrifying, but freeing as well. And I can't really express more than that because of the fact that, this is a novella, and there's very little to it. So it remains extremely slow, actually pacing similar to the previous book, where it's very slow, very mundane, almost nothing happens until it really, really ramps up at the end. So I enjoyed this a ton. Mandelo is an author who has been on my radar, and just everything about this was so descriptive and wonderful. So I will absolutely be continuing to follow along with this author, for sure. Really, really thrilled with it. And so much of this was really hard reading just from the real world perspective, where it actually reminded me of a book I read by Daryl Gregory, Revelator, which is also Appalachian Gothic. And it's maybe a strain of religion, of Christian religion, that I'm not so familiar with, that might be strong in Appalachia, where it just is so controlled about the women and so much about what you would think of as sort of typical, like barefoot in the kitchen, but really about silencing women very significantly. And the strength of that and vehemence of that sentiment is not something I've personally been exposed to. So I'm interested to look into that more, I think. So definite hit. I loved it. Onward to the other stuff that I'm reading. I am starting a buddy read today. In fact, I have started Misery and not gotten very far, only a few pages in really, for my book club. I'm still working on House of Leaves. I'm still reading Your Dear Letter for victober. Those are letters from Victoria to her daughter, the Crown Princess of Prussia. I've also started a werewolf book for my Vampires and Werewolves vlog. And I can't even remember. I think I'm reading something else and I don't recall what it is. So those are the things. It's a massive pile. And I have lined up a load of other things for the coming week because I'm going to need some audiobooks for sure. So yes, books are happening. So who knows? I will probably have double this next week, I bet. So from there, stuff I watched. I don't have a ton to say about the things I watched. I finished Jet Lag season 15, I think, whatever the current season is. And I always love this show. They did another season of Tag through Europe, and they did an All-Stars version where they brought back some people who had been on past, I think, winning teams specifically. And regardless, they brought back 3 people who were previous players, and other than the normal people that are on every season. And it was great fun. It's always great fun, though. I love that show. The other thing is that I have never seen Alien, or the Aliens franchise as a whole. I got mildly traumatized by seeing something kind of graphic on Siskel and Ebert when I was a kid, weirdly, and that kept me from ever seeing it. And I never would have had a chance to see the actual movies while I was a kid. But that has kept me away. I have only seen Prometheus when it came out, and that's much later. That's much more modern. So I've wanted to go back and see. I mean, my cat literally is named for the series, Ripley. So I had to. So I finally went and watched Alien, and it was not scary at all. And it was fantastic. Like, the cinematography was amazing. The Geyer art through the whole thing is amazing. Like, so many cool things. And it was not scary, not really graphic as far as I was concerned. Like, very, very little violence even. And the acting seemed a little understated, so that was weird. But like I felt like they should have been more panicked than they were. They were really like calm or behaving calmly at moments when they should not have been. So that was maybe something that put me off. But man, it was really, really good. So now I need to continue on and watch all of the Aliens franchise. So I have made myself another new project, as I want to do. Really, I'm always making projects for myself. So those are what I watched this week. Lifey stuff this week. It is finally, I'm so excited. Fall. As you can see, I have a long sleeve on, which I've been awaiting forever. It feels like, well, we're already at the end of October and we finally got some fall. So it's no longer summer heat. It's still warmer than most places for fall, but it's cooling down overnight, which is really nice. And it's very pleasant and crisp during the day, as it is most of the time. So I'm really happy about that. The leaves haven't quite started turning massively, but like small trees, you can tell they're turning, and that's exciting to me too. So I love autumn. I also went to a Halloween event at our botanical garden this week. So we have spirits in the garden, which is literal and figurative. That seems to be the theme today, is literal / figurative. So it's usually a distillery / hard alcohol type of event where you get a cup and you get to try samples of a bunch of different local distillers. And this year it was not as big, I think, and also not limited to just distillers. So they had a mix of brewers, distillers, and wineries throughout. So lots of tasting. I got 1 bottle of whiskey, I think. I don't even remember what it was that I got. Yeah, I got a bottle of whiskey from a small brewer that is not here in the city, but is like an hour away. So probably a place I would not ever get to, though I could. Would not be a big deal, but unlikely that I would. So that was really fun. We did get around to look at Halloween decorations around some of the neighborhoods that are more decorated. So it's almost like going and looking at Christmas lights. And that was really, really fun. So just good times all around. I'm really so happy we're finally out of summer. Like, it was so hot for so long. I really needed this weather change, and I'm feeling very good. Though my skin is crazy, crazy dry. I don't know why. I've been the past couple weeks, I can't remember if I mentioned this at all before the past couple weeks, but I have been going through the process to get set up as a volunteer at a local animal shelter, a big animal shelter, to walk dogs. And that is a whole, like, a lot of hoops to jump through to get everything and get access and stuff. So I got my badge to do that, because you have to have an access badge, and got approved and everything this week, and did my first day walking dogs on my own and got to meet so many lovely dogs, and it was just very happy. So I was really thrilled to have finally gotten through all of the process for that. So I think that was my week for this week. Otherwise, I do have a recommendation, but I don't remember what it is, so I will just save it for next week. I forgot to grab my tablet. So I think that's it for me today. I hope you had a wonderful week in reading and in life, and thank you so very much for watching.